Alright, what's going on everybody? Welcome back to another video here on the channel, and today we're going to be talking about the internet as you know it. Now, over the last few days, there have been tons of comments on my videos over on Twitter, lots of places, people asking me to make an update video to a video I made a long time ago, and that video in particular, over the last few days, has seen a new surge in viewership, and that is because very recently the United Kingdom passed a sweeping online quote-unquote safety bill, okay? Now, I've talked about these plenty of times here on the channel from European nations, even here in the United States, because this is something that has been going on for quite a long time. It's not like this is a new issue that just popped up overnight. The idea of online safety and protecting the children and all these other things, these are things that have been commonly used by governments, especially here in the West, to attempt outright internet censorship, and unfortunately, the United Kingdom has achieved pretty much just that. So this online safety bill that has been passed in the UK, I had talked about this initially a long time ago when it was still kind of in like the deliberation stages, but this is officially law now in the UK, and it's gotten to the point where it is quite literally the worst possible outcome. Now, you're probably thinking, oh, but Optimus, this is one of those bills, it's aimed at protecting kids, it's making sure that they're not seeing harmful things online, it's protecting them from the evils of society. Well, I'm just gonna outright tell you that no, it's not. There is nothing like that happening. In fact, all that this bill is doing is curbing anti-government speech from people. It's making people age verify, which is broken, by the way. We'll talk about that in this video. And it's marching the internet as we know it off of the cliff, okay? That's exactly what this is. So for years now, there has been this very conceited effort, I would say. These people are extremely proud of quote-unquote protecting kids, or we're saving children, but in all reality, this is literally just a front. So one of the things that this bill does that is outright insane is it forces these online platforms, you know, like Twitter, Facebook, social media websites, all of these different internet websites and social media platforms, they are forced to abide by this particular part where these companies can basically be fined by the UK's government for not doing enough to curb like hateful speech, like harmful rhetoric, things around like suicide and violence, things that are supposedly bad for kids to see and interpret online, right? Well, as we all know, things like suicide and violence, these never happen in the real world, you know? This is just things that we can push into a corner and pretend never happened. We can just censor it away, and of course, these things will just go away overnight. It's not like there are multitudes of problems across societies in the West that are leading to massive crime rates, violence, rapes, all kinds of different things, right? So this bill on paper is going to prevent some of the most extremist, disgusting things from happening online, but what it really is doing to the average everyday person, it's forcing them to put their biometrics or their government information into websites to age verify who they are. But what this actually makes sure to do is if you have anything that the government thinks is wrong to say or is too extreme to say, which by the way, that's not very well defined, okay? If you have basically anything to say that could go against the narrative of the people in control, realistically, it can be labeled as harmful, it can be labeled as abusive, and realistically, we've seen this time and time again throughout history off of the internet, okay? We've seen time and time again in authoritarian regimes, dictatorships, theocracies, places like this, that it starts with something simple, right? The government will ban certain types of expression, the government will ban certain types of speech, they will put some sort of guardrails around the public dialogue because, you know, you got to keep the dialogue safe. You got to make sure that people aren't saying things that are wrong, maybe they're bad thoughts, right? You got to prevent people from having the capability to say this. And of course, you know, as it goes and how a lot of people are going with this online bill, you have a certain portion of the population every time that'll go, oh, well, of course, we'll just trade a little bit of our liberty and our security will be better because of it, right? We'll be safer for trading away some of our freedom of speech. Then the next thing you know, 4 years later, you can't say anything critical, you can't say anything negative. If you do, you're put in a fucking work camp, or you're sent off to the gulag, or you're executed by the state police, or your family is rounded up. This is how it starts. And am I saying that that is immediately what the UK will be in 3 years? Not necessarily, but is it possible? I guess anything is possible. They say the same thing about America. They say America is in dictatorship right now under the Trump administration. Media freedom and civil liberties are getting destroyed by the administration. So it is possible, and we do as a population see the inherent, I guess, negative of just allowing the government unfettered control over everything you say and do. In fact, this is one of the key principal reasons why here in the United States we have such a strong First Amendment, okay? That's the whole point. It's to prevent the government from being able to do things like this. Now, this particular law is not even being enforced properly. In fact, you know, with like a lot of this age verification thing, they are now basically age verifying people to talk about the wars going on in the world. People are trying to talk about like the Israel-Palestine conflict, for instance, right now online. People are in the UK right now trying to have dialogue about these pressing global affairs. You know, the war in Ukraine, that's literally in fucking Europe. It's basically on their back door, and people aren't even able to talk about it or see information about it because they're not age verified, or because the fucking media is considered too harmful. That's where this is going. It's already starting. There's people on Twitter who are saying it's trying to force them to age verify with their biometrics and with their IDs and whatnot so that they can read or talk about information regarding this. Can someone please explain to me, in any situation where something like this takes place, what incentive does the government have to not shut you up about them? There is literally never an incentive for the government. Whenever they are pushing some sort of new law that can control your speech or what you're saying or what you're thinking in any way. And of course, they always try and portray it as something different, but once they make that first step, there is nothing in the way of them outright taking control over the press. There is nothing in the way of them taking outright control over the dialogue in your country. And if you live in a country where the government is controlling and they occupy the dialogue exchange in your nation, you do not live in a free country. You do not live in a nation with a free exchange of ideals. You live in a borderline dystopian dictatorship. And unfortunately, the UK, with some of their other laws in recent memory, have been marching further and further towards this. And that to me shows even more negative when it comes to this quote-unquote saving the children that the Online Safety Act is supposed to provide here. The UK, for the last few years, has been trying to push back against extremism and evil thoughts and people being mean, people saying false things, misinformation. And all it's resulted in is things like, well, for instance, there was a viral video I covered here on the channel where an autistic woman was dragged out of her home and arrested by the police as she screamed and cried because she said that a woman looked like a lesbian on the street. This is a real thing. You can look this up, okay? This is the saving the children and stopping extremism that the UK is up to. And it's insane because England, the United Kingdom, if you go back all this time throughout history, places like England, France, these places in Western Europe, these are some of the original principal backbones of democracy. These are some of the original birthing houses of modern Western ideology. And these places have completely and radically transformed in the last 10 to 15 years to completely hate these identities. They hate the idea of free speech. They hate the idea of personal liberty. In fact, it's gotten to the point where Europeans openly mock Americans in some instances for these things. And it's weird because I'm not even going to sit here and pretend like here in the United States it's perfect. Our Constitution is under attack. I'll talk even more about that here in a little bit. But I mean, just to think that Europe, this is the place where all of these ideals birthed and spread throughout the world. These are the original stomping grounds. And it's under attack to the point where, you know, they want kids to be protected so badly, you have to put your ID in to use Twitter. You can't say anything too extreme or the government may show up at your house because they have your information. You may be arrested for making an inflammatory comment on Twitter. If you're saying something stupid as a troll on the internet, you can be arrested because you're spreading misinformation and hateful rhetoric. This is bullshit. And once again, I said this earlier, but I want to reiterate this as well as I can, okay? There is no limit on this. Every time a bill like this is introduced, or God forbid, it is passed, it's always, well, hateful speech, extreme rhetoric. These are the things that you hear. There is no hardline definition that explains what extremist rhetoric is. Now, can someone who supports bills like this or supports a motion like this, for instance, can someone in this group please explain to me, if this was so about protecting children, if this was so about stopping horrible shit from happening, why is it that there are no actual guidelines? Why is it that there's no actual text definition in the bill that outright describes what it is that they're targeting? Why is that? I mean, this is for public bettering, right? This is for public, safety. We're supposed to know what this bill is targeting. Well, if that's the case, why is there nothing in the bill that gives an outright outline of what they are and aren't allowed to block? Why is it always going down to these, vague definitions of things like harmful content? What the fuck is harmful content? This week, sure, it might be someone who's a Nazi, right? It might be somebody who's posting swastikas or something on their account. But then next week, it might be the LGBTQ community. It might be, the religious community. It could be anyone. That's the point here. It could literally be anyone that the government determines, they're harmful to society, their ideology is harmful. It's always done that way, so whenever things change, as they inevitably do, they can always just shift the target. They can always just shift the pieces on the chessboard around to play the new game that they want to play with the laws that they've outlined. And then, of course, if we want to even talk about the efficiency of a bill like this being put into place, in the United Kingdom, since this bill has been enacted into law, there has been a massive surge in VPN usage in the country. Users who are connecting to VPNs that are masking their IPs and their online dealings to make it look like they're from places outside of the UK. Obviously, if your computer is signaling that you're from Albania or the United States or Brazil or whatever, right? You no longer will be auto-enforced under these British policies. You'll be able to access content that you were not able to do so before. You'll be able to see the internet realistically as it should be. And that's another thing in this video I want to say to people. Please make sure that you go and you start downloading and becoming familiar with VPNs, access to the dark web, things like this, before the governments start cracking down globally on the internet. That way, when it does happen, and inevitably the internet as you know and love it is completely destroyed by the Western governments, you will still be capable of semi-using it at a regular pace. And another reason I mention this is because similar laws with similar, moral preachings of protecting children and keeping the world safe, similar bills like this have been introduced in the United States as recently as May of this year. Now, this has been something here in the United States that is a lot more controversial. I mean, this is controversial in the UK, don't get me wrong. There's a lot of people there really pissed off about this, as they should be. But here in the United States, like I said, ideals like personal liberty, the Constitution, things like that, they're at least a little bit more prevalent and socially accepted, I feel like, within our populace. Maybe not in some of like the larger areas, or like maybe in some of the like strongholds for like the government, Washington, D.C., things like that. But by and large, you go ask some fucking corn farmer out in Omaha, Nebraska what he thinks about the Constitution. That man will be willing to die for that motherfucker, right? So things like this have had a harder time taking off in the United States, but in really, that's the thing. In reality, we already have some of our own instances of this. We have the United States Patriot Act, which was enabled after 9/11 to allow the government basically unfettered access into our private lives. They've destroyed, realistically, multiple amendments out of the United States Constitution in the meantime, and we now live in a global spying apparatus that is the U.S. federal government that is monitoring all your phone calls, texts, emails, your Alexa's listening to you, everything, right? So this isn't limited to one place in terms of government trying to overreach, silence the people, get people riled up about things like this, trying to shake up basically these principles that we've founded and lived our countries on for hundreds of years, right? But the reason, the government really wants this control, the government really wants these kinds of bills in place across the UK, the US, France, all these other places, is because the world is honestly heading for quite uncertain times, okay? And that's just the reality of it. I'm not here to preach a political message to you, but let's look at the reality of the world around us right now, okay? The boomers, as a collective of people who have controlled society for the better part of the last, half century or so, they are starting to die off, okay? And that means that Gen X is up next in terms of like the big old voting class. Then 20 years from now, it's going to be millennials, and then Gen Z. And Gen Z, over the next couple years, we're really going to start making our impact on it. Now, when you look at the politics between these groups, there is a massive difference, okay? The older generations are a lot more liberal in their ideas, but for some reason, the Gen Z populace is extremely conservative right now. And there are far-right movements in Europe, in the United States, in Japan, across all these different places that are growing, that are rising. Their politics are becoming a lot more popular with people in the younger generations. And this isn't me, like saying, oh, this is what I want. This is what is literally happening, okay? This is what the data is showing. This is what everything is showing across the entire world. So within the next, I think, 10, 20, 30 years, especially with things like AI and the possibility of all these global conflicts between major powers and stuff, right? There is going to be this radical shift in society. Not even necessarily politically, but just in every stage of our life. The world is going to be very unpredictable over the next 30 to 40 years. And what does the government hate the most? They hate uncertainty. They hate when the populace is very uncertain about their control. They hate when the populace's politics are shifting radically into different directions. Once again, we've seen this happen multiple times throughout history. It's led to some of the most historical moments in recent memory. Things like the Arab Spring, things like the rise of the Nazis, World War II, the Civil Rights Movement in the United States. These things all happened because the younger populace had radically different ideals than those who were older than them, okay? And that's realistically what's kind of happening now. The world is about to go through a major power rebalance over the next couple decades. And so the government wants as much control over the internet and over the mediums in which we communicate and use our daily lives, because for them to control those things during those moments of uncertainty, they can then control the dialogue. They can then control the narrative. They can then control everything that's going on. So if people are online discussing things, maybe discussing wrongdoings of the government, you see that right now with the Epstein files. The government has been here in the United States trying to push a narrative that there is no list. Epstein did kill himself, all these different things that we know are false. Can you imagine how happy they'd be right now if they had a real firm control over the internet here in the United States, if they could just shut shit like that down instantaneously? This is why you need a VPN. This is why you need to actually understand how the internet works. This is why you need to know. And the most ironic part about all of this, right, is they claim we're protecting children. We're trying to protect the kids from horrible things. We're trying to protect them from extremism and hateful conduct and hateful material and people being harmed. And so they blot out the internet, okay? They block out things online. They start trying to make you age verify. That way, whenever you make an inflammatory statement online or you say something they don't like, it can be tied right back to your real name, under your real address, under your real social. That way they can fuck with you however they choose. They only control the credit system in America. They only control all the banks. And there are literally banks that are refusing to do business with people and shutting their bank accounts down because they disagree with them politically, or because they think that what they're saying is wrong or too inflammatory or whatever it may be. You have companies like Visa and MasterCard who basically dominate the credit card industry, the thing that half the modern economy runs on. They dominate it, and they're literally forcing game companies as we speak, and online hosting platforms and whatnot as we speak. They're literally forcing them to change what kind of content material they allow, or they'll stop payment processes for them. You think this is all a conspiracy. A lot of you think I sound fucking batshit right now, but if you do even the most basic amount of research, you will see the government is trying to amp up control over everything across all these countries, all across Europe, all across the US, all across Canada, all across the West, because they are afraid of what is going to happen next. They're afraid that if people are capable of speaking out against the government in the rough times to come, I mean, who knows? There may be revolution. People may be in the fucking streets marching politicians down them. You never know. And these are the things we see in the history books, and we think, oh, that's not possible. That could never happen today. I think it's more possible of happening today. If people were capable of doing that when the telegraph and the radio and whatnot were the dominant, mediums of communication across the planet, you think we can't do that today when someone can send a tweet to another person instantaneously? And that's what they're afraid of. That's what they're afraid of. That's what these governments push back so fucking hard to stop. That's why the government at every single turn strip you of more of your rights, trying to disarm you, trying to make you more stupid, trying to make you more susceptible, trying to make you listen to them, trying to make you give them the keys to the fucking car. And there are people in the populace who wish to do so. There is a fantastic quote by one of the founding fathers of the United States and one of the most brilliant minds of his time, Benjamin Franklin, and he says, "Those who would give up essential liberty to purchase a little temporary safety deserve neither liberty or safety." Now, what this means is there are people out there who are willing to give the government or a controlling force more dominance over their life, and they do this and sacrifice their liberty, their, individualistic freedoms. They sacrifice those for a temporary safety. And what this means, and what I think the most misinterpreted part of this statement is temporary safety. We are not transforming with bills like this in the UK or in the US. We are not transforming our society to become some safe haven where extremism never occurs, where bad conversations don't happen, where misinformation doesn't exist. We are turning our societies into a, quote, temporary safety, where, sure, for 6 months or whatever, you might think things are fine because the government didn't outright ban your favorite website or ban you from speaking because you said you oppose a bill that they came out with. But this is all temporary. This means that for a couple of years, you may notice minor inconveniences like having to log in with an ID somewhere. But what this is it's astroturfing the normality, okay? This is astroturfing what happens 3 to 5 years after the initial onset of said law. You're inconvenienced with these things, right? You have to use your ID. You're slowly starting to accept it as you continue to do this. Then in 5 years, when they shut down an entire political party and their members online from having anything to say, whether that be left, right, center right, center left, whatever it may be, well, we've already been dealing with it for so long. I mean, the temporary safety that we experienced in these last couple of years couldn't go away, could it? Well, yeah, it absolutely will go away. What you think this law will intend to do will inevitably be morphed into something much horrible, much more horrible, much greater, much meaner. It will be used by governments to suppress the citizens. It will be used to erode your personal freedoms. It will be used to destroy the internet as you know it. And so, as people who enjoy the internet for a plethora of different reasons, whether you use it primarily for work or primarily to watch YouTube videos like this or to goon or whatever, I really don't care. We all need to stand together regardless of political ideology, regardless of anything. I mean, this affects all of us the same. We as populaces in these countries where this is occurring, where laws like this are taking place and God forbid, actually becoming law, we need to remind these governments, if you come after the places where we congregate, where we share our politics, where we share our ideals, if you come for the areas where free speech in the modern day is festered the most, there will be consequences for the government. That is the only way that shit like this is going to stop. Because as it stands, politicians feel no fear. They feel no real pushback even. I mean, what? Some tweets are getting put out? Videos like this are getting put out? Unless these people are in fear of never working a day in their life again and eternally humiliating their bloodline until the day that they die, there will be no real substantial change on this front. And this is one that is dangerous because most people now are using the internet. I mean, it's even in like third world countries and whatnot, you have a significant portion of the population online. The world is online now. You do your banking online. You do your work online. You do your schooling online. If we allow the government full access to everything that has to do with us online, if we allow them to silence what they dislike, if we allow them to shut up who they don't want talking, sure, it might be the guy that annoys you right now. It might be the guy with different political ideas, or it might be the weird furry trying to find his weird goon material online or whatever. But guess what? Next week, you might be that guy, you know? It might be your political ideology that ends up on the chopping table next. It might be your favorite websites that are up on the chopping table next. It might be you and your family's communication on the line, as it is for some people who live internationally and whatnot, right? So if you want to give these things up, if we want to allow the internet to be turned into a government overseeing drone that silences anything anti-government, that silences any dissenters, that shuts down any public conversation about controversial topics, that bans people from seeing the gruesome realities of the wars that our governments, by the way, are funding to fight. That is the most important part of this, okay? I talked earlier, and this is going to piss me off, but earlier I talked talked about how people in the UK under this new bill are being forced to age verify and other things simply for trying to read up and understand current goings in Israel, Palestine, and in Ukraine, Russia, and these different wars and conflicts going on. Your tax dollars as a UK citizen, as an American, whatever, right? Your tax dollars, your government support is going to fight these wars. I mean, like, here in the United States, right? Imagine the United States government making it to where you had to prove who you are through a government ID, through your biometric scans, through your fucking home address, through your government ID itself, right? Imagine if you had to enter these details and confirm these details so that you can understand how your tax dollars are being spent to give Israel new missiles or to give Ukraine new Patriot missile systems or tanks or whatever. Your tax dollars, by the way, going to fund these wars, going to fund these efforts across the world, and you can't even read about them because it's extreme, because it's too graphic, because a 16-year-old can't understand it. We show 16-year-olds pictures of war, pictures of the fucking, you know, the internment camps and shit from World War II. We show them pictures of Auschwitz. We show them pictures of D-Day. We show them pictures of the Battle of Iwo Jima. We show them pictures of the guys in World War I standing by the mustard gas with their fucking mask on. But they can't see buildings being blown up in the modern time because that's too extreme. They can't see how their tax dollars and how their government's allegiances are going to fund wars across the planet because that's too extreme. And this is the world people want you to live in. People want you to live in an ignorant world where you yourself can't verify what the fuck is going on. You need somebody from the government to tell you. You don't want to live like this. Nobody wants to live like this. And the people who do, I get it, you know. A lot of these people are willfully ignorant. They don't understand. They don't read history. They don't pay attention to what the fuck is going on. So when some nice looking guy in a suit comes along and says, we're going to protect your kids, okay? This new law for the internet's going to protect your babies. They're not going to see nothing bad no more. People believe it. People fucking believe it because they believe that people have the best of intentions for them. Well, sorry to break it to you. This isn't the world you think it is. People do not have your best intentions at heart. They are not doing this to protect you. The government is never doing this to protect you. And anytime, keep this in mind for the future, anytime the government says, we're doing this to protect the kids, you should be scrutinizing that bill about 100 times harder because 9 times out of 10, it is never about protecting children. It is never about making sure the world is safer, any of that. It is about making sure the government is consolidating more power. The government is consolidating more control. The government is making sure that you, your neighbor, your brother, your sister are fucking compliant. Yes, I am worked up about this topic, but it is because these bills actively stunt our freedoms. These bills are the antithesis of what we should have in society. They are against our cultural ideas. They are against the beliefs that we founded our countries on. They're against the ideas that we hold closest today. Because if we don't stop this now and it all gets under and all these countries are doing it, guess what? You think it's hard stopping them now. Imagine how hard it's going to be to repeal all this once it happens. Take a look at the UK for a great example. Anyway, with that being said, thank you guys for watching. If you did enjoy, make sure to leave a like. Subscribe if you're brand new around here on the channel. Follow me over on Twitter and Twitch at SubTheOptimus. Make sure to check out Shoptimus down below. Thank you to my Watch Optimus subscribers. Your support helps the channel tremendously. And until my next video, guys, this is Optimus, well, saying stand up for the internet and stand up for your rights, and signing out.